When you come up with excuses for why other people are successful and you're not, when you give yourself an escape, yeah, well, that's easy for you to say, you know, you do this, you do. Trust me, that is dangerous.
There's one thing that you have to do, and that is you have to first of all work your ass off. And number two, you have to have a very clear vision of where you want to go.
Listen to me. To be effective in combat, a warrior must not feel for his enemy. The road ahead is long and unforgiving. No place for a boy. You must be a warrior.
I was the perfect warrior, cold and ruthless. I live by my strength alone, uninhibited by foolish emotion. エレンを奪い返し、即帰還するぞ。信号を捧げよう。
Alright everybody, you've seen the title, you know what it is. Welcome to the first episode of Ascension Season 4. The Ascension is my competition prep series. I started this way back in like 2016, I want to say. The whole point is you ascending to a greater physique, to something, you know, the best version of yourself, and no way better to do that, in my opinion, than a competition. I am doing a competition mid-August. I will be doing the Can Fit Pro Super Show. This time around, I want to talk about kind of the reasons why I'm doing this competition. It's not as simple as like, hey, it'll be cool to show on the vlog and I'm gonna look great and make a lot of douchebag ab shots on Instagram. There's actually there's three specifically different reasons for why this year in particular is going to be a little different and kind of special, if you will. The first difference this year is that, to be honest, last time I competed, you know, way back in 2019, although, like, don't get me wrong, I looked phenomenal compared to the average person, if I do say so myself. I finished, if you guys remember, 10th in that competition. Now, yes, it was a stacked competition. I probably say that it was definitely above average as to what I am used to. That being said, still, what the fuck? In the past, I've never really given that much emphasis on placing. I always talk to you guys about how you shouldn't compare yourself to other people. You should only compare yourself to yourself. You should compare yourself to the man you were yesterday, the man you were last year, the man you were last competition. And to be honest, it's a lot easier for me to say that when you're still placing top threes. I went from, it was like second, third, first, second, third, and then 10th. Where the fuck did that come from? I didn't come necessarily the best I have. Definitely not as good as I believe in my opinion compared to where I was in 2017. Again, this is the hard thing about bodybuilding. You work your ass off for months, and yeah, you might get down to like, you know, like 10% body fat, but sorry, you gotta be 9% body fat. You gotta be 8% body fat. Like 1-2 pounds of fat, especially in the right area, abs, legs, this, that, can make the difference between you placing first, 5th, 10th. Yeah, it pisses me off. So I'll be honest, this is the first competition I have ever done where there is sort of a retribution aspect, because what the fuck was that? The next difference, and this would... Why are you disrupting my videos, madam? Excuse me? The next difference, and probably the biggest one, I am going to be competing in men's physique, yeah, but I also want to compete in classic physique. To be honest, I've always wanted to do it, but I've always kind of at the back of my mind, look, let's be honest. Men's physique was made for guys like me. Guys who don't have a crazy amount of muscle. Guys who aren't like 210 pounds, 5'10" and 7%. body fat. I think a good example of which was maybe like, I don't know, 2014 Jeff Side. Like, sort of Steve Cook, except even he is somewhat on the bigger side of the spectrum. Classic Physique, well, let's be honest, is known for guys like Chris Bumstead. And obviously at the lower kind of like regional level shows that I compete at and natural shows, you're not expected to have anywhere near that level of muscle or conditioning, but still, you are expected to have some muscle and conditioning, and it is definitely a step up from men's physique. And so I've always in the past thought like, you know, can I do this? But you can't fucking live your life like that. You can't sit here like on the sidelines constantly wondering like, oh, am I? You just need to A, sign up to do it, and then B, work your ass off and do the best that you possibly can. And to be honest, this is what I've always wanted to do. The first show that I ever did back in 2014, the main thing I focused on was bodybuilding. And although that was probably the worst and the first show I ever did, where I didn't come in anywhere near lean enough as to what I should have been. I was probably like 8, 9, maybe 10 pounds fatter than I should have been in terms of total weight. I was like 178 at that competition. I still enjoyed it. I still did mostly like the way I look. I mean, I look at these photos of me doing like the lat spread, doing abdominal and thighs, front double bicep, all that stuff. That is what I really wanted to sign up for. That is what I grew up on. I mean, I started bodybuilding like so many of you after watching Pumping Iron. And so men's physique is great, don't get me wrong, but that isn't necessarily why I got into this. I didn't get into this to wear board shorts and stand there and do pretty much 3 poses. This, the other way, and then backwards. I got into it to do the front double bicep, to do the rear lat spread, to do all of these things. But honestly, what probably got to me is this is kind of cool. I see these videos all the time. I see like there's so many of these like motivational like bodybuilding channels. There's like a bunch of them, but I saw this one. I think it was by, I'm gonna butcher the name. I think it was called like Nick Andro Motivation, something like that. This one especially, it did kind of get to me, and I thought this is so fucking cool. This is why I got into bodybuilding and men's physique and just this sport in general way back when. And it's almost a travesty that I haven't done this since, again, 2014, since that first show of mine. I want to do it again, win, lose, or draw. There isn't a draw. Yeah, I want to do it this year. But the last thing I want to mention, and this one, in some ways it may be the most important thing, the most important reason that I'm doing all of this for. This is going to be a crazy throwback. I'm going to show you a video right now, which probably 99.9% of you have never seen. This was literally like the first video I ever made on my channel. If you go back to like 2014 or something, I made this video. It was using like, I tried to like mimic, you guys ever watched the old school Justice League cartoon? And I wanted to kind of like emulate that. And I made this video, this is kind of cringe looking back on it. And it was featuring a lot of guys in the industry who I kind of like really watched and looked up to in many ways. It was a bunch of, not all, but a bunch of natural bodybuilders. Besides obviously guys like, like Arnold. It had guys like Matt Ogus, Christian Guzman, Chris Lovato, Nick Wright, Max Tuning. There was like a bunch of them. I was kind of thinking about that the other day, how on that list, many of those guys don't even do like YouTube content anymore. Other guys, it's like they're still do, but they're no longer kind of like in the natural side of the industry. Not that that's like, a bad thing at all. Again, people make different decisions. You gotta do what you gotta do, especially if you're competing at the Olympia, for example. But there really isn't as much natural fitness representation on YouTube, I find. Then there was like a whole new generation of other kind of guys growing up or coming up in the industry, but it's kind of shitty because they said they were natural at the time, and then now years later they've come out and they're like, oh, actually I did some pro hormones and this and that, and like, okay, so it's funny, people always say like, oh, fake natty, but like this is like actually, yes, a confirmed example of that. And then now we have kind of just like flip the table entirely. Steroids really have kind of gone to a certain extent mainstream on social media, on YouTube, on TikTok. I talked about this in a previous video I did last month. It's really been to a certain extent like popularized and in some ways, unfortunately, normalized. I think Noel Diesel, I'm butchering his name, I already know it. He did a great video on this where he kind of talked about how like it's great that people are being more transparent and open about this stuff, him included. But with that, the double-edged sword is that you do get to a certain extent like, oh, you know, everyone's talking about it, everyone's doing it, and then you end up with dumb kids doing this as well. Again, we're not talking 30-year-olds who've been training for over a decade. No, we're talking 19-year-olds who barely have like 12 months of lifting experience under their belt, suddenly Googling, you know, SARMs or Tren or God knows what, and buying this shit off the internet. We've come a long way from like 2015, 16 or whatever, watching like Matt August's like natural bodybuilding competition. I know I'm gonna get a bunch of you guys saying like, oh, he's not natty, he's a fake. I get it. Look, the debate is never gonna end for that kind of stuff, but still, to go from that to like guys making videos outlining their cycles, talking about the pros and cons of like test versus DECA, just openly, it's like, shit, you know, like, again, there's nothing wrong with that because they are open, they are honest, and again, I'm very libertarian with this kind of stuff. You do what you want as long as you're a legally consenting adult and as long as you're not lying and selling bullshit to kids. Besides that, it's all good. That being said, there is a certain double-edged sword, which is it's the normalization of this stuff. And it's also the fact that I think to a certain extent, the natural side of the fitness industry has been a little bit drowned out. And again, don't get me wrong, there are still plenty of new guys making great content. There's guys like Lex Little, Joe Phaser, I don't want to butcher his name, over in the UK making excellent content. There's still new guys, you know, up and coming, talking about the natural side of fitness, powerlifting, all these things. And that's fucking great. I love that. But even that being said, I do think that sort of like the balance has shifted or so, you know, in the last few years. There's a disturbance in the force, and now there's a lot more of, I mean, think of some of the biggest channels that have come up over these last few years in fitness. We're talking like More Plates, More Dates, Greg Doucette, Brandon Harding. In some cases, excellent channels. I love MPMD's content. I would watch like 25-minute long videos outlining the science of all this crazy mumbo jumbo. And a lot of these channels, it's like, you know, they'll be kind of like, steroids are bad, don't do it, listen to your doctor. But also, here's a 20-minute video about like my favorite cycle. That's a big reason why I wanted to do this. I wanted to do another natural competition prep. I want to show that that's cool, but if you don't want to go down that route, you can still do it this way. Because when I see guys hopping on gear to like, let's be honest, not even look that impressive, like I guess they just wanted to like get a shortcut to what they would have looked like naturally anyway, had they taken a little bit more time. I'm like, why? Why did you do this? Why did you take fucking like sketchy drugs you probably bought off the internet to be what, 175 and 10% body fat? Like that looks, sure, you look not bad, but you could have done that naturally and not fucked up half your endocrine system. And don't get me wrong, I'm not even that much against steroids in general. And this is something which, I'll be honest, like I have not crossed off the list for myself. At least not at this point in time. But the reason I can do that is because I'm almost fucking 30 years old and I have been working out for literally over half my life. I joined the gym on my 14th birthday, which means more than 50% of my life I have been at least somewhat consistently training my ass off in the gym. I can do this shit. 19-year-old kids who've been lifting in their high school shitty gym for like 18 months, probably not the best idea. So yeah, I don't want people to hear what I'm saying and interpret it as sort of like, I am so morally just and elite and so above you because you decide to use performance enhancing drugs. No, I don't give a shit as long as you're not openly dishonest about it. And as long as you're doing it for a legit reason, such as bodybuilding, you know, actually competing as opposed to just looking better for chicks in high school. That's dumb as fuck. I just want to give another option, showcase another option, which I think, to be honest, maybe that side of the industry has become a little bit more quiet over the past few years. And I'd like to kind of like broaden its reach a bit more, a bit similar to what it was back then, if that makes sense. that pretty much is it, guys. I know that this video was a little bit like more like sit down philosophical, and you guys might be wondering, okay, Igor, that's great, but where's the actual lifting, eating, all the things that actually come down to the competition prep? Don't worry, that is coming. Next week, we are getting into the good stuff, the training, the eating, the everything. So look out for that, Ascension episode 2. But in the meantime, as always, guys, I appreciate each and every one of you for coming by, watching me do this for the 4th time around. It's been a little while, but it feels good to be back.